it is considered a best practice, and I'm using the quotation marks because I want you to understand that if you read this verbiage in a test where it says, please configure iBGP based on best practices, that really means for me two things. I'm going to set up a full mesh of iBGP peers unless I'm doing something fancy like route reflectors or confederations. That's other stuff. But it also means I'm going to peer to and from loopback interfaces. You only do this as a best practice for iBGP because it adds an extra hop, and eBGP doesn't want to see that as an extra hop. So here's what we do. Let's say I'm on R4, and I want to make my session resilient. So I say R4, config router. I say neighbor 10.333, remote AS 65010. Good. So I got that. But I peered with its loopback interface. But when R3 communicates back to me, it better be using the source IP address of 10.333 because that's what I'm pointing to. So R3, let's move this down below, R3 is going to have a config that looks like the following. R3 4 then it will have update source loopback 0. Now what that says is BGP traffic, BGP update traffic from R3 to R4 is going to be sourced from 10.333. Now, R4 is going to have a similar configuration. R4 is also going to have to source from its loopback interface. So this is how we source to and from loopbacks. So I'm going to extend these lines so we understand what's going to happen. Now, what happens is this: when there's a failure, let's say we had that link and then it failed. Well, no problem. The underlying traffic for BGP updates might go through R1 to R2 and around again, but we're going to see the same source IP address. So we're not dependent on the physical pathway that is being used inside of our autonomous system between our BGP peers. That's a huge deal. This session resilience says, I do not care how I get to my neighbors inside of my autonomous system, just so long as I can get there. And so I anchor my peers to loopback interfaces. I point to their loopback interface, but oh, by the way, I have to change my source IP address so that it matches. This basically says the following. When I say update source loopback 0 on R3, it says source from 10.333. Source from 10.333. And on R4, it says source from 10.444. Now, my neighbor commands are matching up. My neighbor commands are matching up. My source on one router matches the neighbor parameter on the other router. This is a BGP best practice, and it is a always do it sort of thing for iBGP neighbors. So you build in your loopback interfaces, make sure your IGP, your interior gateway protocol, such as OSPF or EIGRP, make sure your IGP is able to get there. So you're going to advertise these loopback addresses or loopback interfaces into your own autonomous system so that then BGP can peer to those addresses.